Welcome to the final part of our series on Israel. We conclude our journey in two of the country's largest and most important cities, in ancient and traditional Jerusalem and in modern and cosmopolitan Tel Aviv. In this episode, we visit the 3,000-year-old city on the hills of Judea and follow the footprints of the ancient Jewish, Muslim, and Christian kingdoms that built and rebuilt their versions of a sacred Jerusalem over the centuries. Then we'll travel to Tel Aviv on the Mediterranean coast, where the liberal and easygoing lifestyle of its worldly residents is celebrated just as religiously. So join us, I'm David Saldran, and this is Executive Class. No wonder this is called the center of the world. Jerusalem is the holy city for the three great monotheistic religions of the world. For the Jews, this was the city of David, the place of Solomon's temple. For the Muslims, this was where the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven. And for Christians, this was where Jesus Christ was crucified, where he died, and where he was resurrected. The view from the Mount of Olives gives you a better idea of what this means. On the Temple Mount, where Solomon's temple once stood, is a golden dome of the rock, and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, built by the Muslim Umayyad caliphs, and partially obscured, the Church and the Holy Sepulchre of Christian Byzantines, later rebuilt by Crusader kings. Indeed, no other place in the world I can think of is as revered and is hotly contested as Jerusalem. The ancient city within the walls has seen more cycles of conquest and persecution than any other. No doubt, a tragic irony for such a holy place, and one that calls itself the City of Peace. Save for sporadic incidents, Jerusalem is peaceful today, and pilgrims of every religious persuasion can worship openly and mingle among themselves freely. It's hard to believe that in the past, a scene like this one wasn't always tolerated so easily. Though the old city changed hands constantly, it's been under the control of Israel since 1967, the first time for the Jews in over 2,000 years. But apart from the Star of David that flies over the citadel, Jerusalem's skyline remains distinctly multicultural. The best way to explore the old city is on foot. And one of the best ways to enter it is through the Jaffa Gate. You'll know it's the Jaffa Gate because of this landmark behind me, named after me, the Tower of David. The Crusaders called it David's Gate during their reign. The current name Jaffa was given by the Ottoman Turks who ruled the city for 400 years. Hi, hello.
Hello,
David.
good morning.
Hello.
Welcome to Jerusalem.
It's a common name here, right, David?
Yes, indeed. This is David City, and today you're going to see a lot of Davids once you walk on the Ramparts Walk. We are standing at one of the main gates of the old city of Jerusalem.
The Jerusalem Ramparts Walk takes visitors on a historical tour above the walls built by the Ottomans 450 years ago.
The Ottoman were here, and especially the Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent. And he decided to secure this city in order to strengthen it economically. So he built the walls, and since he wanted business to go on, he put this very special sign here.
Where is it?
It's inside there, and it says in Muslim language, La ilaha billallah wa Ibrahim halilallah, meaning that there is no God by God. This is from the Quran, and usually it ends that Muhammad is his prophet. But here, since he wanted business, he said that Abraham, your ancestor.
You were smart. Okay. You wanted more people coming
Yes,
in,
he
not
wanted
just the Muslims.
Exactly,
You wanted to
wanted
include
all
the Jews of the city to do
Jews,
business, and the
Christians, and Muslims, all those who believed in the one patriarch Abraham.
Suleiman's reign in the region was one of the most tolerant, well, at least for Jerusalem standards. That's why he's acknowledged by Jews, Muslims, and Christians, who, like me, don't mind donning a costume to look like the Ottoman Sultan. But it's the great Jewish King David that looms largest over the city. David conquered Israel 1,400 years before Suleiman did and made it his capital. Here on the so-called King David's Path, you'll come across views of David's Tower and David's Citadel, King David's tomb on Mount Zion, the ruins of the ancient city of David, even the modern King David Hotel. I have to say, it's quite an honor to be named David in this city. The tour is a walk back through more than 3 millennia, maybe 5 even. Every stone here tells a story, and archaeologists are always coming across new discoveries. And every quarter you pass offers a unique side of the sacred city. The Armenian quarter was settled by Armenian Christians in the 4th century AD and have lived here uninterrupted ever since. From above the Armenian quarter is the best view of the Roman Catholic Church of the Dormition, which commemorates the eternal sleep of Mary, the mother of Jesus. The 19th century church on sacred Mount Zion was built over the ruins of Byzantine and Crusader churches destroyed by Muslim armies. Remember, in Jerusalem, almost every holy site was built over someone else's sacred shrine.
This is an interesting point of view atop Zion Gate. This single picture behind me explains what Jerusalem, the city, is all about. First of all, a holy city. You see the 3 different faiths represented in this picture alone. The synagogue, the white dome, the golden dome, which is a Muslim mosque. And then of course, you see some crucifixes here and there representing the Christian religion. Apart from that, it's a living, breathing city because apart from those symbols, you see satellite dishes, and then of course, a football pitch. People live here. They're not just praying here. It's not just about pilgrims. Citizens live here as well.
Too many tourists fail to see this diversity and focus solely on their own religious beliefs. But only with an open mind can one truly grasp the significance of Jerusalem. And that's why a visit to the Jewish quarter, where the first people to consider the city as holy live, is a must on your itinerary. For over a millennium before Christ, the Jews dominated the old city. But after Roman, Arab, Christian, and Ottoman conquest in the next 2,000 years, many were driven out, and the few that remained became a persecuted minority, living in a squalid corner of Jerusalem, the Jewish quarter as it came to be. Captured by the Israeli army in 1967 and controlled since, the old quarter was quickly rebuilt. The synagogues reopened, the population grew, and the streets and squares of the neighborhood gentrified to a certain degree. Hard as some try, it's impossible to ignore over 1,000 years of Arab roots in this city.
Here in Jerusalem, the Jews, the Christians, and the Arabs disagree on so many things, but at least there's one thing they can agree on. It's food.
Arabian falafel and shawarma. This is what you call food diplomacy. But unlike food, faith is a more contentious thing. Nowhere else is this felt more than at the Temple Mount that straddles the Jewish and Muslim quarters of the city. Ha-Harbayit for the Jews, Haram al-Sharif for the Muslims. The Temple Mount is sacred to both faiths. Solomon's temple, and later Herod's, was built over the rock where Jews believe Abraham was told to sacrifice Isaac. After a Jewish revolt, the Romans destroyed the temple completely. For the Muslims, they believe the mount was where the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven on Buraq, his steed. They built the magnificent dome of the rock, and the Al-Aqsa Mosque to commemorate this holy feat. The Temple Mount that dominates Jerusalem takes up a mere 14 hectares, but it's the center of the world for both faiths and the center of the conflict.
The chief rabbi says it's forbidden for Jews to climb the Temple Mount, no matter how sacred the site is for Jews. But there's a political reason as well. Doing so could start another war.
With no access to the mount, Jews worship at the ancient temple's western wall instead, the closest they can get to the Holy of Holies, where they believe God Himself is present.
Jews from all over the world come to touch the Wailing Wall, or the Temple Wall. They believe by being here and praying here, you're in direct communication with God.
Non-Jews like me can visit too, though you need to follow some basic rules, like cleanse at a fountain before entering, and cover your head with a hat or a skull cap. The ladies are segregated by a screen. Despite protests from liberal and feminist Jews, the Orthodox practice of separating men and women during worship is a current rule. The Western retaining wall, or kotel in Hebrew, is also called the Wailing Wall, and to express sorrow over their long-lost temple, observant Jews engage in ritual weeping. Prayers are done in silent, or written and slipped into cracks in the wall. While non-observant Jews come out of respect for their ancestors' culture, or snap a selfie, it's the ultra-Orthodox Jews that take their visits far more seriously. Young and old in traditional dress come to pray and study scripture every day. You find them in deep reflection under Wilson's Arch, a cavernous section of the wall that houses sacred scrolls of the Torah, Judaism's holiest book. When we return after the break, we leave the Jewish quarter and explore the Muslim district of the city, with its exotic souks and arabesque street architecture. Then we'll follow the last footsteps of Jesus along the Via Dolorosa, the Christendom's holiest place. Welcome back to Jerusalem, where the three Abrahamic religions of the world overlap and often collide. I'm standing before Judaism's most sacred site, the Western Wall, where the first temple of the Jews was built, and where Muslims venerate the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque today. The large plaza around the wall was once an Arab neighborhood, but was bulldozed in 1967 to increase Jewish access and security. Arabs are still the majority in the old city, but you'll find most of them contained within a Muslim quarter these days.
Sometimes the walls that divide the people of Jerusalem are merely psychological, because here's an example of just how fluid the different quarters are. After I leave this flag, the Jewish quarter, I enter the Muslim quarter, just a few steps away.
It's like a different world altogether. The colors, the sounds, the aromas of food and spices especially. The Arab Muslims were the masters of Jerusalem since the 7th century AD, and except for the Byzantine and Crusader interludes, Arabic souks, mosques and buildings have dominated the old city. Not all Arabs are Muslim, however. There are Christian and secular Arabs too. A healthy mix of faiths which help explain the religious tolerance you find in the quarter's souks.
Take a look at this. Nativity scene, Christian, some Islamic art, and of course, the menorah of Judaism. All together in a single store.
The openness is welcome indeed, since the Muslim quarter hosts many of the holiest sites of Christianity, about half the Stations of the Cross, and the Via Dolorosa, the path Jesus walked towards his own crucifixion. The first two stations of the cross where Jesus was sentenced is actually located in the courtyard of an Islamic boys' school.
After Pilate's judgment, Jesus was flogged by soldiers and a crown of thorns put on his head. This church behind me commemorates that event.
Scholars continue to debate where the events of Christ's last day really happened, but even skeptics would fall on their knees in the presence of such powerful imagery. The stations of the cross are marked by signs, though maybe not in a language you might recognize.
The Via Dolorosa is venerated by Christians of all denominations, so it can get a bit confusing. Don't expect to come across strictly Roman Catholic sites. In this case, the third and fourth stations is the Armenian Catholics that have jurisdiction over it.
This Armenian chapel commemorates the spot where they believe the suffering Christ faces Mother Mary. Accurate or not, you can't help but feel moved.
Because the events of the actual Via Dolorosa happened so many years ago, 2,000 years ago, no one's really sure what is true and what is legend. Well, one of the stories is that this mark over here was Jesus' actual hand. At this point, he was so tired, he leaned on the wall and put his hand on this part of the surface. So pilgrims believe by touching this part of the wall, they're touching the hand of Jesus as well.
The rest of the Via Dolorosa cuts through busy markets and lanes of the Muslim quarter and emerges at the Christian side of the city. But all of a sudden, it seems to end. That's because the rest of Jesus' passion unfolds under the massive domes of a church.
So this is it. The reason Christians have come to Jerusalem for thousands of years. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the location of Jesus' death, his crucifixion on the cross, and of course, his burial, and then his resurrection. These are the events that define Christianity.
The site of Christ's tomb was discovered in the 4th century by the Roman Empress Helena, the Christian mother of Constantine the Great. A church was built to enclose it. The original Byzantine structure was destroyed, and much of what we see today was the work of the Christian Crusader kingdom in the 12th century. Throughout all those years, Latin, Greek, Armenian, Ethiopian, and Egyptian Coptic Christians have had to share the same church, often peacefully, but sometimes in violent rivalry.
There's an interesting mix of practices inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Some are Greek Orthodox, some are Roman Catholic, but oftentimes the two mix. It doesn't really matter, does it? Same God, one God.
Despite the odd patchwork of icons and traditions, and the jealous protection of each sect's partitions, you can't help but feel the shrine's overwhelming magnificence and its spiritual transcendence. A narrow stairway leads to the Hill of Calvary, where Christ's crucifixion took place.
This is Golgotha, the place where Jesus was crucified. And the rock, they say, the original rock, still here. And the point where the cross was planted is also here.
The Greek Orthodox chapel welcomes anyone who wishes to pray and touch the rock that stood witness to Christ's death on the cross. The anointing stone, said to be where Jesus' body was prepared for burial, draws pilgrims eager to feel their Savior's presence, though the current slab was only added in the 1800s. But that's the power of faith.
there's a long line of people waiting to get into the burial site of Jesus Christ inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Now, there's a big debate whether indeed Christ was buried there. Some say he was buried outside of the walls, but it shouldn't matter, should it?
Apparently not for these pilgrims who wait in line, for hours at times, just to touch the Holy Sepulchre, the tomb of Christ, from where he was risen. No matter your beliefs, you'll fall under the sepulchre's spell. The holy site is majestic, with marble work, ornaments, artifacts, and mosaics that can put the best museums to shame. Witnessing so much religious fervor in the Christian, Muslim, and Jewish quarters can be overwhelming. But don't worry, there's much more to do here than pray.
Okay, I know what some of you are thinking at this point. What if I'm not a religious person? Will I still enjoy Jerusalem? The answer is yes, because it's an extremely historical city. And that's not good enough. What about this one? It's also extremely beautiful.
Jerusalem is magnificent at daytime, mystical at sundown, and magical at night. And if ever you decide to journey out of its walls and into the streets of the new city, expect to be surprised by a cosmopolitan sight that defies old stereotypes. The Manila Mall is an upscale shopping arcade with a modern, fun-loving vibe that's in stark contrast to the conservative atmosphere of the old city. So who better to ask about this dual nature of Jerusalem than a longtime resident, dedicated to telling the world about this side of his country.
Well, I'm a Jerusalemite. I've been here for most of my life. I like the atmosphere. You could have nightlife here of different shapes, sizes, entertainment. You have plenty of things to do with the kids. You can go out at night safely.
And speaking of stereotypes, there's always that element where people feel it might be dangerous going there.
You can go out and visit Israel any time of the year. We should not let other people who want to change the way we live around here in Israel and around the world dictate things to us. So you've been around, you feel safe, you know that the most dangerous thing here is food, good food.
Indeed, food is one of the most underrated things here, especially the new wave of restaurants in the city. Though in Jerusalem, there are limits.
Because of the city's history, the population here tends to be a bit more conservative than other parts of the country. So you'll find so many kosher restaurants here, some even ultra kosher like this one. But here's what, if you're expecting some man with a beard to serve you in a tavern, an ancient tavern, you're wrong. Because you can be modern and contemporary and still serve kosher at the same time.
Here at Joy, one of the city's top modern cuisine establishments, every dish is cooked and prepared under the supervision of a rabbi. Holy or not, the food tastes amazing.
This is a kosher restaurant, which means you cannot mix dairy with meat. And since I just had meat earlier, what am I doing here with ice cream, chocolate mousse, and pudding? Well, it's not made with dairy.
It's made with natural substitutes, but tastes fantastic nevertheless. Proof indeed, you can respect tradition without being a slave to it. And that's the challenge for Jerusalem today. How to celebrate one's faith and identity openly without being a chauvinist, or worse, an extremist. A danger that has plagued the holy city for too many centuries.
I think it's one of our missions and to humanity, a humanitarian mission, to keep Jerusalem and other religious sites in the world, in Israel, open for worship for about 1/3 of humanity. Christians, Muslims are more than welcome to come and worship. Access is free.
It's a mission to the world that every faith and nationality ought to respect. Not just Jerusalem, where the effects of intolerance have been most severe, but all throughout Israel, where contemporary values risk colliding with religious conventions. We'll continue with the concluding part of our Israel series next week with a visit to coastal Tel Aviv, the country's unabashedly liberal and hedonistic city. Till then, I'm David Zeldran, and thanks for watching.